Due to issues with my recording setup, this video is very choppy at times. I hope to redo this video at some point. If I have, the video will be linked in the description and the pinned comment below. If it's out, watch that video instead of this one. It is this capacitor here, C3, that commonly goes bad, a 100 microfarad 16 volt capacitor. We are going to be replacing it with this 220 microfarad capacitor. And while we're here, we are going to replace the rest of the capacitors, the rest of the electrolytic capacitors. This singular capacitor is about 10 cents on DigiKey. To get the components for the rest of it, it was about $10 Canadian. So I'm going to do it because it's not that much of a price difference and I like the peace of mind that it gives me. To do it, we're going to use a few basic tools, some of which are nice to haves and some of them are essential, such as a soldering iron, kind of necessary to solder with a soldering iron. Same with solder. We're going to use some flux, as it will make things a lot easier. It's more of a nice to have. Some tweezers. I'm using some angled ones because that's what I prefer. Some wick. This solder sucker. This one's pretty cheap on Amazon. I like it a lot better than the more expensive ones. This is more so needed for the through-hole caps rather than the surface mount ones. And some specialty tools that I will be using because it makes it a lot easier is some soldering tweezers. This helps for the surface mount capacitors. Does not help with the through-hole caps, but significantly more expensive than a generic soldering iron. So all parts and tools that I use will be linked in the video description below. So I'm going to start with the big chunky one here. Actually, let's start with the 16 volt, the one that's more common failure. So with this soldering tip here, the tip that I'm using has a better surface contact on the edge rather than the very tip. So it has better heat transfer on the edge here rather than the very tip at the end. So knowing that, we are going to angle the soldering iron across the pad this way, like so. Now, be mindful of where your soldering iron lands. We're getting pretty close to the display here, but it should be fine. And also be mindful about the plastic of the edge of the capacitor. So for temperature, I'm using 330 to 340 degrees. Using a brass brush here. We're going to clean the soldering iron tip. Normally I have that in the stand, but easier for the video. We are also going to take some leaded solder and put it on the pads just to make things a little bit easier. I'm not used to this setup at all. Okay, we have some leaded solder on there. Now, using the tweezers, we're going to lift up. So we're going to lift this side up, going towards the display. And then we will swap to the other side. So we have this we have the tweezers on there. We have the iron. And it just lifted up a little bit. Now, if I lift it up and angle it this way, you can see that it's up a little bit, which is good. Now we're going to go to the other side and do the same thing. Add some little bit of solder to the tip, to the iron, just to make it a little bit easier. Now with the display being this close, it is really hard to get a good angle. Okay, and that side is now free. Now we're going to go back to the bottom side and heat that up. That side feels free, and it's just hanging on a little bit on the top side there. There. Nice. So we got that one off. So now I'm going to take some solder, some leaded solder, and smooth out these pads. Nice and shiny around. Doing the same to the other one. There. So now we're going to grab the 220 microfarad capacitor. So this is the 220 cap. This one is substantially taller, but should be fine for clearance. I wasn't able to find the same height of capacitor, just because of stocking, but the physical height should be fine. So to place this down with the board markings, you can see the direction. So the capacitor only goes down one way, and the angling of the plastic body of the capacitor, this side has some angled corners, and this side has square edges. So the angled goes to the angled, angled to the angled. And now we're just going to use the iron to do the same thing in reverse and heat up each side. So I'm going to start with heating up the lower side. I'm going to just kind of scoot the capacitor over. Actually, no, let's remove some of the solder from the upper one. That'll probably make it easier to have only one side lifting it up. So I'm using the solder wick. There. Substantially less solder on that pad. And this goes that way. Really wish I took this big one off first. Because that is definitely getting in the way. So I got this side down, but this upper pad is inaccessible. It's under the cap, so I'll need to slide this over. And the capacitor is actually rotated. And of course, with this big one. I think I'm just going to remove this big one just to make it easier. So to do that, we're going to do it the same way. This also helps because I need to take all of them off anyways to replace all of them. Oh, and now the one that I just placed down. Yeah, we're going to take off the bigger one. Yeah, take that off. And this is on a giant ground plane, so that's sucking up all of the heat. And I feel like, no, that's good. So now that that's off, smooth out those pads a little bit, clean off the tip. And let's try putting the 220 back down. Yeah. Down on that side at least. So now I need to do it on top side here. Just melted a bunch of plastic there. I'm going to be pushing down. Yeah, and this tip is way too big to fit in here. Maybe if I slide this down a little bit more. Yeah, there we go. Pushing down on the capacitor with the tweezers. Okay. That is not soldered at all. That's a lot better. Now going back to the front, or I guess the bottom. And I'm pushing down on the capacitor as I heat it. I held the tweezers down for a few seconds longer than I held the iron down. Now if I wiggle this, it doesn't wiggle too much. So that's pretty good. And if we look at it from this view here, it's looking pretty good. Could use some flux there, but fine. A little bit of burnt plastic. Not ideal, but fine. And if we can get this angle, same thing with the burnt plastic and the solder joint there. So that's pretty good. For this cap here, I'm going to use the soldering tweezers to demonstrate those. First, I'm going to add a bit of leaded solder using the regular iron. Got that nice shine there. Go on to the other side. Move the iron around to mix up the solder. And we got the new solder down. So I'm using 350 on the tweezer, on the soldering tweezers. I'm going to hold the capacitor with regular tweezers. So in my left hand I have the regular tweezers, in the right hand I have the soldering tweezers, and I'm going to heat both sides at the same time using the soldering tweezers. There it goes. Moving on to the 10, which is the one that I just took off. We need to smooth those pads out first. And I'll do that once again with the iron. I should use a bit of flux on there, but I'm not going to, just because working on a budget, if you are working on a budget, you won't necessarily want to spend the money for it. I personally find it easier to put these capacitors back on using the iron rather than the soldering tweezers, but that's just my personal preference. And of course, when I'm pushing the capacitor down here, I'm hitting on this inductor. So the bottom side here is just kind of tacked down. It's not very good at all. But that's okay. It just needs to be good enough to hold so we can get the other side down. I added some solder in there to get the solder to flow. And push down. Move back over to the bottom side, which I'll probably have to add some solder to as well. Yeah, it's not flowing, so I'm going to add a bit of solder there. And once again, push down. Actually, I'm not going to touch that with my fingers because that's probably pretty hot. That's pretty good. Angling it up. Focus in. This top side is a little bit off the board, but wait, no, it's this cap. Yeah, we can push the top side down a little bit more. We should also take care of that solder ball there. Which just moved over to this side. By heating that up. And once again, pushing down. Let up on the iron. Hold the tweezers down. Good. Yeah, that's good. And now the big one. So I have the big one right here, ready to be put on. Once again, there's too much solder on the one of these pads here. So I'm going to need to remove a little bit of the solder with the wick. I'm going to clean the soldering tip with using the brass wool again. And to clean up that capacitor up here because I got some solder on that. So I'll probably just reflow that quickly before the other cap goes back down. I think that is still bridged. Not anymore. So now, yeah, still need to remove some of that upper pad. And this is where flux comes in really handy. So I put some flux on the tip of my tweezers. I'm just going to wipe it on. Now I'm going to wipe off the tweezers and redo it with the wick. And first of all, what we're going to see, when even just without the wick, is that it flows nice and smooth and shiny, which is exactly what we want. There. So the flux helped the solder go into the wick there. Now we're going to take our new capacitor and we're going to slide that down. It needs to go down a little bit more so I get access to the top pad. A little bit more. Should go down a little bit more, but I'm leaving it. I'm just gonna go down a little bit more. Yeah. It is just barely held down on that lower pad. Okay. Okay, I think the upper, I think I need to do the lower now. Now we're going to do the same thing on the lower. And I know with the angling, the camera doesn't see it. There we go. It wiggles a lot more than I would like. And looking at this view here, we can see that there is actually quite a substantial gap on the bottom side here. So much so that I can actually fit my tweezers under there. So that's not good. It needs to go down more. So I'm going to need to heat up both the bottom and then the top side and kind of wiggle it down. So let's do that. Okay, I think I got the bottom side down a little bit. So let's move over to the upper side. I don't want to have my iron at this extreme angle, but kind of have to. Okay, I think that top side is as flat as I can get it. I think it's just this bottom side now. It wiggled a lot less now. Still very hot. But looking at this view, there is a lot less of a gap there. So much so that I cannot get the tweezers down. Yeah, that's probably good. So that's all of the surface mount capacitors. So we got these 3 surface mount capacitors all done, but now we have 7 through hole capacitors to do. The nice thing is this one, this one, this one, and that one are all the same. These 2 are the same, and this one is different. So to desolder these, we are going to flip over the board, and I'm going to pick this one arbitrarily, just because that's where my fingers landed. This is where the solder sucker comes in handy, because we can take the iron, heat up the lead here, and then suck it up. So I'm going to start by mixing in some fresh leaded solder onto both of the leads, wiggling the iron around to get a nice mix. I'm going to hold the iron here for a few seconds just to get the heat through. There. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other one. This one's probably going to take more heat because it's on a giant ground plane. Actually, no, that looks like it's good. So now we should be able to just wiggle the old capacitor out. When I wiggle the capacitor, that breaks free. But the other one is still held down a little bit. So I'm going to try to use some of the tweezers to just see. Yeah, now I need to hit it with the iron a little bit. And I'm just kind of pulling on the capacitor from the other side. There it goes. And we have some nice clean holes, which is just perfect. And when looking on the board view here, we can see a line, and on the capacitor, we see a nice line. So that indicates this side is negative with the gold band and squares, so which lines up with that negative there. It is also useful that it's marked as positive on this side as well. Just drops down like so. On the old one, they had it basically flush to the board. So we're going to do the same. So we're just gonna, on the other side here, we're just gonna bend. I'm gonna do both leads. Only really need to do one, but that way it sits nice and flush. And looking at this side, that's pretty good. So now we're going to solder that. And I'm actually gonna bend one of these up a little bit. And on the underside, I'm just gonna push down so it stays flat. and take some solder. And I'm going to go over that again with some flux because that is not a very good joint. And I think I'm going to probably do the same with this one. This is going to be a good demonstration of the power of flux. That's quite a bit, but so be it. Yeah, that's a lot of flux. And we're just going to hit it again. I'm going to go with this upright one first. And I'm going to do the same with this one here. Yeah. Now, while the flux is still hot, I'm going to come in with some alcohol, soak that up, give it a little wipe down. Probably should have clipped the leads first, but oh well. Yeah, going to need to clip the leads and then give it another clean. Give it a nice clip. There. Yeah. And then using tweezers again. I'm gonna scrape out that little bit of hardened flux there. Give it another spray down. And another wipe down. I should be using a cloth instead of a paper towel, but that's just what I have. So it is what I will use. And that, aside from the scratch marks of my tweezers, is looking pretty factory. So I think I'm going to do the ones that are the 3 identical ones. Yeah, that was nice and loose. There, that pulled through. And it just fell out. Good. So now we got 3 more. 1, 2, and 3. And all of these are going to be replaced with the same value of capacitor. The bottom side there is nice and loose, but that top side is not. Once again, because it is bent. So pulling it from the back side, it just pulls right out. Now, what about the second one? So I'm using the tweezers on the back side of the board to pull at it. And then I am going to use my iron on this side. And now finally for the last one. There it goes. So now to check that over, we got nice clean holes. Now I'm going to go over to this view to install them. So again, we're going to look at the markings on the board, and we're going to go, just going to place that down until it stops. Same with this one, markings on the board. Put it into the holes, and then it stops. For this one, there's a little bit of solder still in that hole. So I'm going to go from the top side to clear it out. That little bit of solder that's still in the hole there is causing problems. Actually, just hitting it with the iron there might have fixed it. And then I like bending the leads in a pattern kind of like that. So that way that the leads are going in opposing directions. When doing these solder joints, it should take about 3 seconds each. So we're just going to, when doing these solder joints, we're just going to hold the iron down for a few seconds. We're going to add a bit of solder down, and we're going to remove the iron in the same angle. And so if we put the iron down in this way, we're going to take the iron out in the same way. And then I got these ones over here. That one has a bit too much solder, but it should be fine. And let's go back to the microscope to check over that. I think the dull texture is because of the solder that I'm using, but I think if I was using better solder, it would be nice and shiny, but nice pyramids. That one has a bit too much solder on it. That's nice cone. Yeah, some of these have a bit too much, but yeah. That one, that's really good. The rest have a bit too much, but rather have more than not enough. So now I'm going to use the tweezers to bend the leads up. And I do that just because it makes it easier for clipping. And clip all these. And while I was clipping that, I spotted a cracked solder joint here. You can tell it's cracked because there's this little tiny ring between the base here, got a little ring here, and then this little gray fracture. So I'm just gonna heat that and clean that up. Yeah, that's a lot better. So now I have to replace these two. These two are the same values. I feel like I'm just gonna break things if I do that. And then this one over here next. Okay, finally I've been able to get this one, both leads wiggle when I moved it. So now I can just pull it right out. Just spraying it down with isopropyl alcohol. And I launched my toothbrush for cleaning boards, so I'm going to use the tweezers and just kind of gently rub it down. If I knew where my toothbrush is, I would use it. Right now I'm going to use a claw to wipe it down. And I'm just going to let the alcohol evaporate. And we're going to go to the top side and just do the same on the whole thing. Probably wouldn't be, it's probably not good to spray the display with alcohol, but doing it anyways. Yeah, VFDs probably love this. It's like the shiniest display ever. Yeah, there's still some liquid alcohol in here. I want all this alcohol to be gone before plugging it in. Actually, preferably before assembly. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have sprayed that much alcohol on it. Well, I'm just going to put it under the fan and leave it for a few minutes.